Money can buy almost anything: power, fame, even silence. But for these 5 billionaires, it couldn't buy freedom. In part 2 of our countdown, we dive deeper into the lives of high-flying moguls who stole billions, faked empires, and fooled the world, until it all came crashing down. From the king of good times to the crypto messiah, this is the price of lies at the top. Before we start, click that subscribe button for mind-blowing crime stories, shocking cases, and criminal mysteries you won't find anywhere else. Number 5. Vijay Mallya. The king of good times turned fugitive. He was flamboyant. He was fearless. He branded himself the king of good times, and for years that's exactly how he lived. Vijay Mallya, a billionaire industrialist, owned breweries, racehorses, cricket teams, and an airline. He threw some of the most expensive parties in the world, posed with celebrities, and strutted through Formula One pits like he was royalty. But beneath the luxury jets, the gold-plated shoes, and the glittering empire was a crumbling financial disaster. And when it all came crashing down, Mallya didn't face the music. He boarded a jet and vanished. Vijay Mallya was born in 1955 to a powerful business family. His father, Vijay Mallya, was the chairman of United Breweries Group, makers of India's best-selling beer, Kingfisher. Vijay took over the company at just 28 years old. But he wasn't content with beer. He wanted a lifestyle brand, a symbol of wealth, rebellion, and aspiration, and he made it happen. He launched Kingfisher Airlines, bought cricket's Royal Challengers Bangalore, and entered the Formula One world with Force India. He was India's first billionaire playboy, a fusion of Donald Trump, Richard Branson, and Gatsby rolled into one. But empires built on image are often hiding something deeper. In 2005, Kingfisher Airlines took off literally and figuratively. Lavish interiors, gourmet meals, and air hostesses in red designer outfits. It was marketed as India's 5-star airline. But aviation is a brutal business. Fuel prices soared. Routes were mismanaged. Expansion came too fast, too recklessly. By 2012, Kingfisher Airlines was deeply in debt. Employees hadn't been paid, and the fleet was grounded. The airline's collapse triggered a financial landslide. Banks that had lent to Mallya started to panic. Investigations were launched, and then came the real shock. Over 9,000 crore, roughly $1.2 billion, had been borrowed from Indian banks. Most of it was gone. A forensic audit revealed that many of the loans were taken using overstated financials, false guarantees, and circular transactions through shell companies. Funds meant for aircraft purchase were diverted abroad. Money was routed through tax havens. Documents were manipulated. India's biggest state-run banks, including SBI, PNB, and IDBI, had all been defrauded with full boardroom approval. When bank officials came knocking, Mallya stalled. He denied wrongdoing. He gave press conferences claiming he was a victim of a business failure. But behind closed doors, he was preparing his escape. On March 2, 2016, just days before a court was to seize his passport, Vijay Mallya boarded a Jet Airways flight to London, a country where he had deep ties, a mansion, and multiple offshore holdings. By the time Indian officials realized he had fled, it was too late. He was already sipping wine at his $15 million estate in Hertfordshire, far from extradition reach, at least for the moment. The government of India accused him of being a willful defaulter, a fugitive economic offender, and a money launderer. But Mallya? He claimed he was being persecuted, not prosecuted. In April 2017, Mallya was arrested in London by the UK's Metropolitan Police on behalf of the Indian government. He posted bail within hours and walked free, but the fight was just beginning. India filed a formal extradition request. The UK's Crown Prosecution Service began reviewing mountains of evidence: fraudulent loan papers, bank testimony, and wire transfers to offshore accounts. The Enforcement Directorate ED and CBI accused Mallya of money laundering, criminal conspiracy, and defaulting with intent. Despite the mountain of evidence, Mallya portrayed himself as a business martyr. He tweeted about his innocence. He attended cricket matches. He showed up to court in tailored suits. But the image was cracking. In 2018, a UK court ruled that Vijay Mallya could be extradited to India. The judge found that there was a prima facie case of fraud and money laundering, that the Indian jails were up to human rights standards, and that Mallya had misused public funds. But Mallya appealed. And under UK law, appeals can drag on for years. In the meantime, Mallya moved freely within the UK. He lived in a mansion, attended Wimbledon, and hosted guests at lavish dinners. While Indian taxpayers struggled with inflation, layoffs, and debt, Vijay Mallya lived like nothing had happened. In 2019, India declared Vijay Mallya the first person ever charged under the new Fugitive Economic Offenders Act. His properties in India were seized, his shares in United Breweries were sold. His luxury cars, yachts, and assets were auctioned off, yet the man himself? Still in London, Interpol red notices, parliamentary demands, public outrage. Still no return. For Mallya's former employees, especially the thousands who worked at Kingfisher Airlines, his escape was salt on a wound. Many hadn't been paid for months when the airline collapsed. Some lost retirement savings, others lost everything. And the man responsible? He was toasting champagne in a foreign country, calling himself a victim of media trials. To critics, Mallya became the face of elite impunity. A man who took public money, lied to banks, and walked away smiling. As of 2025, Vijay Mallya remains in the United Kingdom fighting extradition, avoiding prison and appealing every ruling. His reputation in India is ruined. His empire is dismantled. His family legacy, tarnished, and yet he still walks free. Whether justice catches up with him or not, one thing is clear. The king of good times ran out of time. Vijay Mallya didn't just default on loans. He defaulted on trust, on truth, on responsibility. He built a throne on debt and partied as it burned. And when the flames came too close, he flew away. Number 4. Jho Low, the billionaire who bought Hollywood. With stolen billions. It looked like a scene out of a movie. Leonardo DiCaprio, Paris Hilton, Miranda Kerr, Kanye West, and Jamie Foxx partying on luxury yachts, sipping Armand de Brignac, lighting cigars with $100 bills. At the center of it all stood a baby-faced Malaysian businessman in oversized sunglasses, Jho Low. He didn't look like a billionaire. He wasn't a tech genius or oil tycoon, but his money flowed like water. His gifts were legendary. His presence? Magnetic? What nobody realized was that the money behind the glitz was stolen. Not from a bank. Not from a corporation. From an entire country. Jho Low was born in 1981 in Penang, Malaysia, to a wealthy family. Sent to elite schools in the UK and the Wharton School at UPenn, he wasn't known for being academic, but he was a master networker. He befriended the children of powerful Middle Eastern and Southeast Asian families, including Riza Aziz, the stepson of Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak. Jho Low quickly positioned himself as a facilitator, a man who could get deals done, connect investors, and access state funds. But behind the smiles, he was planning something massive. In 2009, the Malaysian government launched 1MDB1 Malaysia Development, Berhad, a state-owned investment fund created to boost the economy through global partnerships and infrastructure development. Jho Low held no official role at 1MDB, but behind the scenes, he controlled it. He set up shell companies and offshore accounts. He arranged deals between 1MDB and firms like Goldman Sachs. And once the money flowed in, he diverted billions. By manipulating bond offerings, overpricing deals, and cycling funds through fake ventures, Jho Low and his network stole over $4.5 billion. With the stolen money, Jho Low went on a spending spree the world had never seen. $250 million on luxury real estate in NYC, London, LA, and Paris. A $35 million jet. $100 million in art Basquiat's, Monet's, and Picasso's. A $3.2 million crystal piano. A $10 million necklace for supermodel Miranda Kerr. $9 million in jewelry for Australian singer Elva Shao. He even gifted a $3 million painting to Leonardo DiCaprio and bankrolled the film The Wolf of Wall Street, a movie about greed, corruption, and laundering, while committing all three crimes in real life. Hollywood was Jho's playground. He partied with actors, producers, models, and moguls. His financing of The Wolf of Wall Street through Red Granite Pictures run by Najib's stepson was just the tip of the iceberg. He threw parties on yachts with DiCaprio. He gambled millions in Vegas with celebrities. He paid Britney Spears $250,000 to jump out of a cake at his birthday. He used stolen money to buy access, build image, and erase suspicion. And for years, it worked. 2015, Journalists at the Wall Street Journal and the Sarawak Report started uncovering irregularities in 1MDB's finances. Where had the billions gone? In 2016, the U.S. Department of Justice launched its largest asset seizure case ever under the Kleptocracy Asset Recovery Initiative. They traced the money trail from 1MDB to shell companies, to personal accounts, to real estate, art, and luxury goods owned by Jho Low and his associates. U.S. officials stated plainly, this is a case where corrupt officials and their associates used public funds for private luxury. As the scandal grew, it brought down Malaysia's Prime Minister Najib Razak. He was charged with money laundering, abuse of power, and criminal breach of trust. In 2020, he was convicted and sentenced to 12 years in prison. His stepson, Riza Aziz, settled with U.S. authorities for returning hundreds of millions. And the man who masterminded it all? Vanished. By 2017, Jho Low had fled Malaysia. He used multiple passports, false identities, and a network of fixers to disappear. He was last seen in Macau, allegedly protected by Chinese officials. Interpol issued a red notice. The US, Malaysia, and Singapore issued warrants. But no one could catch him. He communicated with journalists and lawyers through encrypted apps. He denied wrongdoing, claimed political persecution, and even offered to return billions if charges were dropped. Authorities refused. As of 2025, Jho Low remains a fugitive. So far, US and Malaysian authorities have seized or recovered over $1.5 billion linked to the 1MDB scandal. Assets include mansions in Beverly Hills, New York, and London. The super yacht Equanimity, worth $250 million. Rare artworks, watches, and luxury cars. Film rights and royalties. But Jho Low, the man who orchestrated the theft, has not spent a single day in prison. His wealth, connections, and mobility have shielded him so far. The money Jho Low stole wasn't just cash. It was public funds intended for schools, hospitals, infrastructure, and development. The 1MDB scandal robbed an entire nation. It humiliated global banks, brought down governments, and exposed how easily financial systems can be exploited by one well-connected man with a plan. Jho Low was the invisible thief, the smiling face behind the world's most audacious heist. He bought trust with stolen cash, built an empire on illusion, and vanished behind a curtain of wealth. And in doing so, he became the symbol of a terrifying truth. In today's world, it's not the smartest or the most honest who win. It's the best at pretending. Number 3. Alan Stanford, the fake banker who bought a knighthood. He dressed like a billionaire. He talked like a billionaire. He even got knighted like one. Sir Alan Stanford, a Texan tycoon with an offshore empire and a private jet painted like a dollar bill, promised stability, security, and returns you could bank on. But what he was really running was a $7 billion Ponzi scheme, second only to Bernie Madoff's in size and scale. He didn't just fool investors. He fooled governments, athletes, regulators, and even the Queen. Born in Mejia, Texas, in 1950, Alan Stanford came from a family of bankers. But he wasn't just looking to manage money, he wanted to be legendary. In the 1980s, after real estate success in Texas, he shifted his focus to the Caribbean. There, he bought a bank in the tiny island nation of Antigua and Barbuda, Stanford International Bank, SIB. He promised investors safety, high interest rates, and guaranteed returns through safe, conservative investments. The truth? He was cooking the books from day one. Stanford didn't just set up a bank, he built a private kingdom. He created his own airlines, sports teams, and news networks. He donated millions to local charities and even constructed a massive cricket stadium. Antigua rewarded him with citizenship, influence, and eventually, a knighthood. In 2006, Queen Elizabeth II approved his knighthood. Sir Alan Stanford was now official. He wore it proudly, wielding it like armor. But behind the glamour, he was running a bank with zero real oversight, investing in illiquid real estate, shell companies, and himself. From the late 1990s to 2009, Ceciyeb attracted billions mostly from Latin America and the US. Stanford told depositors their money was being invested in low-risk, diversified portfolios. But in reality, he was paying old investors with new deposits. There were no real profits, just lies. When examiners from the SEC and FINRA asked questions, Stanford stonewalled, delayed, and used high-powered lawyers to keep them at bay. Audits were forged, reports were fabricated, and whistleblowers were ignored, until it all came crashing down. In early 2009, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission finally made its move. They raided Stanford's offices in Houston and seized files, hard drives, and bank records. The charges? Massive fraud, obstruction of justice, and operating a multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scheme. Federal agents accused him of misrepresenting SIB's assets, falsifying earnings reports, bribing Antiguan regulators, embezzling hundreds of millions. One by one, investors began to realize their savings were gone, and Sir Alan Stanford was exposed as a fraud in a three-piece suit. Stanford was arrested and charged with 21 counts, including wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. But he refused to plead guilty. He claimed he was innocent, that the US government had orchestrated his downfall, that his empire was legitimate and the losses were due to government seizure. He even claimed to be penniless and demanded taxpayer-funded attorneys. The man who once flew in private jets and handed out million-dollar cricket prizes now stood in a prison jumpsuit, arguing over bail. Stanford wasn't just a fake banker, he was also a fake sports mogul. In 2008, he made global headlines by organizing the Stanford Super Series, a cricket tournament in the Caribbean featuring teams from England and the West Indies. He offered $20 million in cash prizes, which he flew in and displayed in a glass vault on the field. Players and fans believed he was revolutionizing cricket, but the money? Stolen. When the truth came out, the players were devastated. Careers were derailed. The entire sport was tainted by association. In 2012, after years of delay, Alan Stanford's trial began. The evidence was overwhelming. Forged documents, fake investment portfolios, false advertising, and billions missing. Victims, many of whom had lost life savings, testified in tears. A former Stanford executive revealed how she'd helped him falsify reports, launder money, and silence whistleblowers. After 6 weeks of testimony, the verdict was swift. Guilty on 13 of 14 counts. Alan Stanford was sentenced to 110 years in federal prison. His empire was dismantled, his knighthood revoked, his properties seized, his name erased from the world of finance. He now resides in USP Coleman II, a high-security federal prison in Florida. There are no private jets, no cricket games, no golden thrones. Only steel bars, prison food, and a legacy of destruction. Stanford's fraud didn't just bankrupt institutions. It destroyed lives. Retirees in Latin America lost pensions. Families in Texas lost everything. Thousands were left emotionally and financially ruined. Unlike Madoff, who admitted guilt and expressed remorse, Stanford never apologized. He maintains to this day that he was framed, but the evidence says otherwise. He didn't just sell a fake dream. He sold it with a smile, a handshake, and a knighthood. Alan Stanford's story is a warning. That status isn't proof of honesty, that charisma isn't evidence of integrity, and that behind the polished exterior of even the most powerful can hide a predator. He didn't just rob banks. He became one. And in doing so, he joined the ranks of the most dangerous men in suits. Number 2, Elizabeth Holmes. The blood lie that fooled the world. She was hailed as the next Steve Jobs, a college dropout with a billion-dollar idea. Elizabeth Holmes promised a world where a single drop of blood could diagnose hundreds of diseases. No needles, no pain, no waiting. She attracted billionaire investors, major media attention, and board members from the Pentagon to the State Department. But it was all a lie. And when the truth spilled, so did the blood of trust and reputation. Elizabeth Holmes was born in 1984 into a family with deep roots in government and healthcare. By 19, she had dropped out of Stanford to start Theranos, a biotech startup with a revolutionary goal: to change the world of diagnostics. Her pitch was seductive tests for hundreds of diseases from just a drop of blood using a machine the size of a toaster. It would democratize healthcare, save lives, disrupt big pharma. People believed her. Theranos attracted over $900 million in funding. Its board included former Secretary of State George Shultz, General James Mattis, and Henry Kissinger. Holmes signed a partnership with Walgreens to put Theranos machines in 40-plus stores. Forbes named her the youngest self-made female billionaire with a net worth of $4.5 billion. She spoke at global summits, dressed in all black, mimicking jobs. Her voice, carefully lowered, became part of her brand. But the product? It never worked. In reality, it could barely perform a dozen tests, and most results were dangerously inaccurate. Behind the scenes, Theranos used commercial lab machines to process samples. Employees were threatened into silence. Whistleblowers were fired or stalked by private investigators. Patients received false diagnoses. Some were told they had cancer. Others were misled about infections and medication levels. But Holmes and Kusani Balwani kept lying. To investors. To regulators. To the world. Elizabeth Holmes became a media darling. She graced the covers of Fortune, Forbes, and Inc. She appeared on CNBC, gave TED Talks, and joined global healthcare panels. The press asked few questions. Her youth, her gender, her Steve Jobs narrative, it all created a shield. But one man began to dig. John Carreyrou, a journalist at the Wall Street Journal. And what he found cracked the illusion wide open. In 2015, Carreyrou published his investigation. Theranos was not testing with its own devices. Its technology was unreliable. Patients were at risk. Holmes denied everything. She called the article false and misleading. But former employees came forward. The truth was now public. The FDA, CMS, SEC, and the Department of Justice all launched investigations. Theranos began to unravel. Theranos was banned from operating a lab. Walgreens terminated its partnership. Investors sued. Employees fled. By 2018, the company was dissolved. Holmes' $4.5 billion net worth was officially $0. But this wasn't just a business failure, it was a criminal act. In 2018, Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani were indicted on multiple counts of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit fraud. In 2021, the trial began. Holmes' defense? She was misunderstood. A young woman pressured by a male-dominated system. She even accused Balwani of emotional abuse. Prosecutors showed texts, lab data, emails, and testimonies from lab workers and patients. Holmes took the stand, a rare move. She spoke confidently. But the evidence was overwhelming. In January 2022, Holmes was found guilty on 4 counts of fraud. In November 2022, Holmes was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. She gave birth shortly before reporting to custody in 2023. Her appeal failed. Theranos is gone. Investors lost hundreds of millions. Patients lost peace of mind. Science lost credibility. And Holmes lost her freedom. Elizabeth Holmes didn't just lie to rich investors. She lied to doctors. She lied to patients. She lied to the entire healthcare system. She weaponized the startup myth: move fast, break things, but this time, what broke wasn't just code. It was lives. Holmes sold the world a miracle. But it was made of silence, fear, and fraud. And in the end, she didn't change healthcare. She became a cautionary tale for anyone who dares to ask. What's the cost of chasing greatness when you start lying to get there? Number 1. Sam Bankman Fried, the crypto king who lost everything. He was once hailed as the savior of crypto. A boy genius who built a $32 billion empire from his laptop. He mingled with world leaders, walked red carpets, and promised to change the world. But in the end, Sam Bankman Fried couldn't even save himself. Samuel Bankman Fried was born in 1992 to 2 Stanford law professors. He wasn't just smart, he was gifted. Raised on ethics, logic, and math puzzles, Sam soared through school, landing at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. There, he studied physics but found a deep interest in game theory and soon cryptocurrency. By 2017, Sam left Wall Street and launched Alameda Research, a quantitative crypto trading firm. But that was just the beginning. In 2019, he founded FTX, a cryptocurrency exchange. Fast, slick, and user-friendly, FTX quickly exploded. With endorsements from Tom Brady and deals with the Miami Heat, it was the Apple of crypto. At its peak, the company was worth $32 billion, and Sam himself was labeled the next Warren Buffett. But behind the genius branding and philanthropic tweets was a secret few knew. Sam relocated FTX's base to the Bahamas, where regulation was looser. He surrounded himself with a small inner circle, many of whom lived with him in a $40 million penthouse. The atmosphere was cult-like tight, insulated, and idealistic. They preached effective altruism, the idea of making money to do good. But the reality was more hedonistic than holy. FTX wasn't just an exchange. It was linked to Alameda Research, which was now being run by Sam's on-and-off girlfriend, Carolyn Ellison. Billions in customer funds were quietly funneled from FTX into Alameda. Money that was supposed to be held in custody was being used to pay off debts, make risky bets, and fund a lavish lifestyle, all without users knowing. On November 2, 2022, crypto news site CoinDesk published a damning report. Alameda's balance sheet was filled with FTX's own token. That meant the company's value was propped up by its own money, a financial echo chamber. What followed was chaos. FTX users panicked. In just 72 hours, they withdrew $6 billion. Sam tried to downplay the situation, but the damage was done. Binance, a rival exchange, considered bailing him out, then backed out after seeing the financials. On November 11, 2022, FTX filed for bankruptcy. It was the largest crypto collapse in history. Just 1 month after the collapse, Sam was arrested in the Bahamas at the request of the US government. He was quickly extradited and slapped with multiple federal charges: wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, campaign finance violations. The charges alleged he stole billions from customers and misled investors. Shockingly, much of the money had also gone toward political donations, both Democratic and Republican. He had, according to prosecutors, bought influence at the highest levels. In court, Sam pleaded not guilty, but his closest allies turned on him. Carolyn Ellison and other executives agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. Text messages, Slack logs, and hidden financial records were exposed. Sam's emails and public statements were used as evidence, many of them arrogant, contradictory, or deeply incriminating. By late 2023, a jury found him guilty on all counts. Sam Bankman Fried, the man who promised a better financial future, was facing up to 115 years in federal prison. His sentencing would become one of the most watched in financial crime history. Investors lost their life savings. Customers were left bankrupt. Celebrities who endorsed FTX deleted tweets, while regulators scrambled to tighten crypto laws. But the biggest question remained: how did no one see this coming? Was it brilliance turned toxic? Greed disguised as virtue? Or was Sam Bankman Fried just another con man, wrapped in a hoodie and armed with a Twitter account? His story serves as a modern parable about unchecked ambition, blind trust in tech idols, and the thin line between innovation and fraud.